God is saying, within minutes, something shifts in your life. Don't miss this divine moment. Open before 11:59 p.m. This is not just a sentence. This is not poetic language. This is a countdown from heaven. There are moments in life when time feels ordinary, when minutes pass unnoticed and hours blend into routine. But then there are divine minutes, moments saturated with heaven's agenda, when eternity leans into time and something irreversible begins. This is one of those moments. The Spirit of God is announcing urgency. Not fear, not pressure, but holy urgency. A sacred awareness that what is about to happen is connected to your obedience right now. Within minutes is not symbolic exaggeration. In the spiritual realm, shifts can happen instantly. Chains that held you for years can fall in seconds. Doors that resisted you for seasons can swing open without warning. Conversations can align. Hearts can soften. Opportunities can appear from nowhere. God is not limited by the clock that hangs on your wall. When He decides to move, acceleration overrides delay. When He speaks, systems rearrange. When He breathes, destiny shifts. And right now, there is a divine breath hovering over your life. Why does this message carry a time stamp? Why does it say, open before 11:59 p.m.? Because 11:59 p.m. is a threshold. It is the final minute before a new day begins. It represents the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. It is the line between what was and what will be. Spiritually, it symbolizes the edge of transition. Heaven is saying you are standing at the edge of something. You are not in the middle anymore. You are not at the beginning. You are at the brink. There are blessings that unfold over years. There are promises that mature slowly. But there are also moments that are time-sensitive. Windows that open and require response. Invitations that cannot be postponed without consequence. This is not about God withdrawing love. This is about alignment. When divine timing intersects with human obedience, the result is breakthrough. When heaven releases instruction, it carries power for that specific moment. Delay does not cancel destiny, but it can postpone manifestation. You have felt something shifting already. A restlessness, a stirring, an unexplainable sense that something is about to change. That is not anxiety. That is anticipation. The Spirit often signals before He moves. He prepares your heart before He releases the shift. And the fact that you are hearing this right now is not random. Out of all the messages, all the noise, all the distractions, this word found you. That means your spirit is being summoned to attention. There is a reason the instruction says, open. Because something is being presented. Heaven does not force doors. God knocks. He announces, he reveals. But you must open. Open your faith. Open your expectation. Open your obedience. Open before 11:59 p.m. Before doubt talks you out of it. Before distraction steals your focus. Before fatigue convinces you to wait until tomorrow. This is the hour where hesitation becomes costly. Not because God is impatient, but because this is a prepared moment. Think of it as a divine appointment. If you show up, the shift activates. If you respond, the transition begins. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. Not because you earned it, not because you forced it, but because heaven scheduled it. There are rare moments when the spiritual atmosphere is thick with movement, when unseen rearrangements are already in progress, when what looked stuck is actually seconds away from release. You may not see it yet. You may not feel evidence yet. But heaven is not silent. Heaven is counting down. And here is the shocking truth. Some people will miss their moment because it felt too simple, because it required immediate trust, because it demanded action before full understanding. But faith has always moved before clarity. Obedience has always preceded explanation. The Red Sea did not part before the step. The walls did not fall before the march. A miracle did not manifest before the instruction was followed. This is why this message matters. It is not about a literal clock alone. It is about readiness. It is about recognizing when God compresses seasons into minutes. It is about discerning when the delay you endured was not denial but preparation for sudden movement. You are not here by accident. You are not hearing this by coincidence. The Spirit of God is drawing a line in the sand of your timeline and saying, "This is the moment." Within minutes, something shifts in your life. The heaviness begins to lift. The answer begins to form. The resistance begins to weaken. The path begins to clear. But you must not miss this divine moment. The countdown has begun. Heaven is leaning close. The threshold is before you. And 11:59 p.m. is not just a time. It is a spiritual crossing. What you do in this window matters. How you respond in this hour determines what follows in the next. Something is already in motion, and the next few minutes may redefine everything. There is a difference between hearing God and responding to Him. Many hear, few move, and the distance between those two actions often determines the speed of the shift. God is saying, within minutes, something shifts in your life, but that promise is intertwined with urgency. Heaven is not whispering casually. This is a divine alert, because hesitation has a way of stretching what was meant to happen swiftly. Obedience is not about perfection. It is about alignment. When God speaks into a moment, He releases grace for that moment. If you delay, you are no longer standing in the same stream of grace. Think about how many times in Scripture the instruction required immediate action. When Noah was told to build, he did not wait for public approval. When Abraham was called to leave, he did not ask for a 5-year confirmation plan. When Peter was told to step out of the boat, he could not negotiate the timing of the waves. A miracle was attached to the movement. Right now, many people are waiting for more clarity. They want more signs. They want confirmation layered upon confirmation. But sometimes, the word itself is the confirmation. Sometimes the urgency is the evidence. The reason this message feels intense is because it carries activation. God accelerates destiny in moments like this, and acceleration requires quick agreement. Spiritual procrastination is subtle. It does not always look like rebellion. It looks like later. It sounds like tomorrow. It disguises itself as "I'll pray about it more." But when heaven marks a time, postponing response can mean postponing breakthrough. The instruction says, "Open before 11:59 p.m." That is not symbolic decoration. That is divine precision. It is an invitation to act before the old cycle closes. You may feel resistance rising even now. The thoughts questioning, doubts whispering, distractions pulling at your focus. That is not random. Whenever a shift is near, opposition intensifies. The enemy does not fear your routine. He fears your obedience. Because obedience unlocks movement. Obedience releases what has been waiting behind closed doors. God is not trying to pressure you. He is trying to position you. Within minutes, something shifts, but the shift is triggered by alignment. When you agree with heaven, you step into a flow that was already prepared. When you respond quickly, you show readiness for responsibility. Delayed obedience is partial obedience, and partial obedience slows what was meant to happen swiftly. This is a moment to silence the inner debate, to quiet the overthinking, to refuse the comfort of delay. There are seasons when patience is required, and there are seasons when bold, immediate action is required. You are in the latter. This is not the hour to sit back. This is the hour to rise internally and say, "Yes, Lord." Ask yourself honestly, how many blessings in your life were preceded by a step that did not make full sense? How many breakthroughs came after you acted in faith before seeing evidence? The pattern has always been the same. Movement invites manifestation. Action activates acceleration. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. That shift may begin in the unseen realm. It may begin in conversations you do not yet hear. It may begin in hearts you cannot yet access. But it begins the moment you align. Heaven is not waiting on more preparation. It is waiting on agreement. If this word is resonating in your spirit right now, do not scroll past it casually. Engage with it. Let your response be visible. Like this message as a sign of agreement. Comment "I open before 11:59 p.m. as a declaration of obedience. Share this with someone who needs to recognize their divine window. And if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, do it now, because these moments of prophetic urgency are not random uploads. They are divine alerts meant to position you in real time. When you engage, you are not just interacting with a video. You are stepping into alignment with what God is speaking. The urgency of obedience is not about fear of missing out. It is about faith stepping in. It is about recognizing that when God compresses time, you cannot afford to move slowly. The shift is already charged with momentum. The only question is whether you will step into it while the window is open. There is something powerful about responding before the clock strikes, about acting while the invitation is fresh, about moving before doubt gains volume. You do not need to understand every detail. You need to trust the one who set the timing. The divine countdown continues. The threshold approaches, and heaven is watching your response, not to judge but to release. Within minutes, something shifts in your life, but urgency is the bridge between the promise and the manifestation. Do not let this be another message you admired but did not act on. Let it be the moment you moved. Let it be the minute you aligned. Let it be the turning point where obedience met opportunity and everything began to change. Even before you heard these words, something had already begun to move. The shift God is speaking about is not waiting to start at 11:59 p.m. It is already in motion. Heaven does not scramble at the last second. When God announces a change, it is because the wheels are already turning in the unseen realm. What you are about to witness outwardly has been forming inwardly and invisibly. There are conversations happening that you know nothing about. Hearts are being softened in places you cannot see. Decisions are being influenced. Obstacles are being weakened. Resistance that once stood firm is quietly losing its grip. You may look at your circumstances and see no evidence of change, but the spiritual atmosphere around you has already shifted. The pressure you have been feeling is not random. It is the tension that comes right before release. Sometimes God allows you to feel the stirring before you see the breakthrough. It builds expectation. It stretches your faith. It pulls you out of spiritual sleep and into alertness. That restlessness in your spirit, that sense that something is different, that subtle awareness that the season is turning, that is not imagination, that is confirmation. The hidden shift often begins with a rearrangement. What looked stable might begin to feel unstable. What felt predictable may start to feel uncertain. But do not mistake movement for chaos. When furniture is being rearranged in a room, it can look messy before it looks beautiful. When heaven rearranges destiny, it can feel uncomfortable before it feels victorious. There are patterns breaking right now. Cycles that repeated for years are being interrupted. Mindsets that kept you limited are being challenged. Even relationships are being evaluated in the light of your next level. The shift is not just external, it is internal. God is adjusting you to handle what He is about to release. You prayed for change. You asked for acceleration. You cried out for movement. But when movement begins, it does not always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it begins quietly, like the first crack in a wall that has stood for decades. Invisible at first glance, but irreversible once it starts spreading. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. But understand this: those minutes are the manifestation point, not the starting point. The starting point was when you first believed, when you first endured, when you first refused to quit. Heaven marked a moment, and from that point forward, a process was activated. Right now, angels are on assignment concerning you. Strategies are aligning. Delays are expiring. What was held back is approaching release. The enemy senses it too. That is why distractions have intensified. That is why doubt tries to grow louder. But noise increases when breakthrough is near. Opposition rises when resistance is about to collapse. Do not misinterpret the intensity of this hour. The pressure is proof that something is moving. The discomfort is evidence that transition is happening. If nothing were changing, there would be no tension. If nothing were shifting, there would be no stirring. This is why obedience matters so much. You are stepping into something that has already been prepared. Imagine a door that has been unlocked from the other side. All that remains is for you to push it open. The mechanism has been released. The lock has turned. The invitation stands. Some of you will notice small signs first. An unexpected message. A sudden opportunity. A surprising sense of peace where anxiety once lived. Others will experience a dramatic pivot. A call that changes direction. A decision that alters your course. A confirmation that removes all doubt. But whether subtle or sudden, the shift will be undeniable. And here's what you must understand. This movement is not temporary emotion. It is structural change. It is foundational adjustment. God is not offering you a brief moment of relief. He is initiating a repositioning that will echo beyond this night. You might feel like nothing looks different yet, but the hidden shift is often the most powerful stage. Seeds grow underground before they break the surface. Foundations are laid beneath ground level before buildings rise high. What is happening right now is deep, strategic, and intentional. If you have felt like giving up recently, that was not coincidence. The enemy tries hardest when he senses expiration on your struggle. But your endurance has carried you to this threshold. You did not quit. You did not abandon faith. And now the movement has begun. There is more about to unfold that will make everything clear. A deeper layer of revelation is approaching, and when you see how all the pieces connect, you will understand why the timing had to be exact. Hold on. What comes next changes everything. Before we continue, receive this blessing as a prophetic seal over this hidden movement. Type "I am ready" for the shift in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 314 is now activated. And as this shift unfolds, remember that this message is part of a greater mission to awaken hearts before their divine moments pass. When you sow into this work through Super Thanks, membership, or a PayPal donation using the link in the description or the PayPal QR code flashing on the screen, you are helping this prophetic alert reach someone standing at their own 11:59 p.m. Scripture declares that as you sow, you will reap a harvest pressed down and overflowing, and that promise is alive right now. I believe God is saying, when you release, I release. Let your giving become a seed in this hour of acceleration. Step into it boldly. Activate the harvest. Not every change in your life carries the same weight. Some shifts are temporary adjustments. Others are divine pivots. What God is speaking over you right now is not a minor improvement or a short-lived breakthrough. This shift is different. It is not cosmetic. It is foundational. It is not a surface blessing meant to excite you for a moment and fade away by morning. It is a structural transformation designed to reposition your future. In past seasons, you may have experienced moments of relief, prayers answered in small ways, doors that opened briefly, opportunities that seemed promising but did not last. Those were not wasted moments. They were previews. They were reminders that God hears you. But this time, the movement carries permanence. It carries weight. It carries establishment. The reason this shift feels intense is because it is not just adjusting one area of your life. It is recalibrating multiple dimensions at once. When God brings a defining change, He aligns relationships, resources, timing, and internal readiness together. It is like pieces of a puzzle locking into place simultaneously. That level of coordination creates pressure in the spiritual atmosphere. You feel it as anticipation. You feel it as restlessness. You feel it as the sense that something bigger than you is unfolding. This shift is different because it comes after endurance. You have walked through seasons that tested your patience. You have faced delays that stretched your faith. You have endured silence that forced you to trust without visible proof. Those seasons were not punishment. They were preparation. God was building capacity in you. He was strengthening your foundation so that when acceleration came, you would not collapse under the weight of blessing. There is a divine pattern. Before elevation, there is endurance. Before establishment, there is testing. Before expansion, there is stretching. What you are stepping into now carries the evidence of all three. The trials you survived qualified you. The tears you cried purified your motives. The waiting you endured deepened your dependence on God rather than on circumstances. Another reason this shift is different is because it aligns with divine timing, not just personal desire. There were moments in your past when you wanted breakthrough, but heaven knew the timing was not complete. You were ready emotionally, but other elements were still being arranged. Now the alignment is synchronized. What needed to mature has matured. What needed to move has moved. What needed to fall away has fallen away. You may notice that certain things no longer have power over you. Fears that once dominated your thoughts are weaker. Insecurities that once paralyzed your decisions are fading. Even temptations that used to pull at you have lost intensity. That is not coincidence. That is evidence of internal transformation. God does not release lasting external shifts without first securing internal stability. This shift is also different because it carries clarity. In previous seasons, you may have stepped into opportunities with uncertainty. You questioned whether it was truly God or just emotion. But what is unfolding now will come with peace. Not necessarily ease, but peace. A deep inner knowing that this is ordained. That this is not forced. That this is not manipulated. That this is aligned. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. But unlike previous changes, this one will not require constant striving to maintain. When God establishes something, He sustains it. When He opens a door that He authored, you do not have to exhaust yourself keeping it open. The grace that initiates it will be the grace that upholds it. You will also recognize that this shift impacts more than just you. It touches those connected to your destiny. Family members, friends, colleagues, people around you will feel the ripple effect. Because when God positions one person, the blessing rarely stops there. It flows outward. It influences environments. It shifts atmospheres. This is why the enemy resisted you so fiercely in previous seasons. He understood that this was not about a small improvement. It was about a strategic advancement. He sensed that if you endured long enough, you would reach this exact threshold. But his resistance did not cancel your appointment. It only revealed its importance. As this moment approaches, guard your focus. The intensity before breakthrough can create distraction. Old fears may try to resurface. Familiar doubts may whisper again. But remember, noise increases when resistance is breaking. Do not mistake final attempts at distraction for actual defeat. This shift is different because it carries divine acceleration with divine stability. It moves quickly, yet it stands firmly. You arrive suddenly, yet it lasts. It surprises you, yet it was written long before you recognized it. You are not stepping into a random change. You are stepping into a prepared season. A season marked by intention. A season marked by alignment. A season marked by establishment rather than experimentation. The clock continues its quiet movement toward midnight. But what makes this hour sacred is not just the time. It is the transformation attached to it. When the shift manifests, you will look back and realize that nothing about this was accidental. Every delay, every test, every closed door was positioning you for something far more solid than you imagined. This shift is different because it is not just about what you receive. It is about who you become. And who you are becoming is ready for what is about to unfold. Whenever a divine threshold approaches, a battle intensifies. Not because God is uncertain, and not because the outcome is fragile, but because breakthrough provokes resistance. The closer you get to 11:59 p.m., the more you may feel tension rising. This is not coincidence. This is confrontation. When heaven announces a shift, the unseen realm reacts. You may have noticed unusual fatigue lately. A heaviness that does not fully make sense. Distractions appearing from nowhere. Small conflicts growing larger than they should. Thoughts of doubt repeating louder than usual. These are not random emotional fluctuations. They are strategic attempts to drain your focus before the moment of crossing. The enemy does not fear your potential in theory. He fears your obedience in action. He fears the exact minute you align fully with what God is speaking. Because within minutes, something shifts in your life, and once that shift locks into place, certain doors will never close again. The spiritual battle around your 11:59 p.m. is subtle. It does not always show up dramatically. It shows up in procrastination, in scrolling endlessly instead of praying, in choosing distraction instead of reflection, in allowing minor discouragement to overshadow major promises. It whispers, "You can respond tomorrow." It says, "This isn't urgent." It suggests nothing will really change. But heaven's message contradicts that whisper. This is urgent. This is time-sensitive. This is a prepared window. When Daniel prayed, resistance delayed the visible answer, but the answer had been released from the first day. There was warfare in the unseen realm. When Paul and Silas worshiped in prison, the chains did not fall until midnight. There is something powerful about late hours. Something significant about moments when darkness believes it has prevailed, but heaven is preparing a reversal. 11:59 p.m. represents the tension point. It is the final minute before a new day, the last breath of the old season. And spiritually, it is often where the battle feels strongest. You may feel the urge to give up right before breakthrough. You may feel tempted to doubt right before confirmation. That pattern is not new. It is strategic. The enemy hopes exhaustion will silence your obedience. He hopes discouragement will delay your response. He hopes fear will cause hesitation. Because if he can delay you long enough, he can attempt to postpone what God scheduled for this hour. But understand this clearly: the battle is not proof of defeat. It is proof of importance. No one fights over empty territory. Resistance shows value. Opposition reveals significance. You must guard your mind carefully in this window. What you allow into your thoughts right now matters. Do not entertain voices that contradict what God has declared. Do not rehearse old failures. Do not magnify worst-case scenarios. The battlefield is often internal before it is external. Practical alignment in this hour is simple but powerful. Reduce distractions. Create space for stillness. Speak declarations out loud. Ablaze edged thoughts with intentional faith. You do not need a dramatic ritual. You need focused agreement. If fatigue is pressing you, push gently, but intentionally. If doubt is whispering, answer it with truth. If distraction is pulling, refocus deliberately. This is not about striving. It is about staying spiritually alert. There is also another layer to this battle: relationships. Sometimes when a shift is near, misunderstandings increase. Conversations become tense. Old patterns try to resurface. Be cautious not to engage emotionally in conflicts designed to steal your peace before midnight. Not every argument deserves your energy. Not every reaction deserves your response. The enemy would love for you to cross into the new day emotionally drained and spiritually scattered. But you can choose differently. You can cross with clarity, with composure, with confidence. Within minutes, something shifts in your life, and that shift is strong enough to withstand opposition. But your posture matters. If you step into it distracted, you may not recognize it immediately. If you step into it doubtful, you may question it unnecessarily. But if you step into it alert and aligned, you will see it clearly. The spiritual battle around your 11:59 p.m. is not about stopping you completely. It is about weakening your awareness. It is about dulling your sensitivity to the moment. But you are not unaware anymore. You recognize the pattern. You see the urgency. You understand the timing. Midnight has always carried symbolic power. It represents transition. It marks separation between what was and what will be. And right before that separation, the tension peaks. But here is the truth that overrides every whisper of doubt. Heaven has already authorized the shift. The battle does not determine the outcome. It only reveals that something significant is about to break through. Stand firm in this final stretch. Quiet your environment if necessary. Guard your thoughts. Protect your peace. Refuse distraction. Refuse delay. Because when the clock moves from 11:59 p.m. to midnight, you are not just entering another minute. You are stepping into the manifestation of what has been prepared. And no amount of resistance can cancel what God has already set in motion. God is saying, within minutes, something shifts in your life. But attached to that declaration is a clear instruction: open before 11:59 p.m. This is where many people misunderstand divine moments. They assume that if God wants to bless them, He will simply override their hesitation. But heaven operates through invitation and response. There is a door before you, and while God has unlocked it, you must turn the handle. What does it mean to open? It is not merely physical action. It is a spiritual posture. To open means to come into agreement. To open means to release resistance. To open means to say yes internally before you see evidence externally. Faith is the key, but obedience is the hand that turns it. Some doors in life require force. Others require permission. The door God is placing before you right now requires willingness. It is not locked from His side. It is waiting on your response. You may be asking, open to what? Open to change. Open to new direction. Open to letting go of what feels familiar but no longer serves your next season. Open to trusting God beyond your comfort zone. Open to the possibility that what is coming will stretch you beyond what you have known. Many people pray for open doors, but when those doors appear, fear steps in. What if it fails? What if it changes too much? What if I am not ready? These questions feel reasonable, but they can quietly close what heaven is trying to unfold. The instruction to open before 11:59 p.m. carries urgency because hesitation strengthens fear. There is also another side to this door: release. Sometimes opening means releasing what you have been holding on to. Old disappointments, past offenses, familiar limitations. You cannot step through a new threshold while carrying the weight of the previous room. God is not just inviting you into something new. He is inviting you out of something old. Within minutes, something shifts in your life, but the shift requires space. If your hands are tightly gripping old expectations, you cannot receive new assignments. If your mind is anchored to past pain, it will struggle to embrace present promise. Opening also means vulnerability. It means trusting God without demanding a full blueprint. It means stepping forward even when you cannot see the entire staircase. Divine moments rarely provide complete explanations. They provide enough light for the next step. There is a reason the instruction includes a time marker. Open before 11:59 p.m. That phrase carries spiritual symbolism. It suggests intentional action before the close of a cycle. Before the old day ends, make a decision. Before the familiar season expires, align yourself. This is not about superstition. It is about responsiveness. Think of the door as opportunity wrapped in obedience. On the other side is acceleration, clarity, and repositioning. But between you and that side stands a simple yet profound choice. Will you open? Opening might look like speaking a declaration out loud. It might look like sending a message you have been postponing. It might look like forgiving someone quietly in your heart. It might look like committing fully instead of partially. The action may seem small, but the alignment is powerful. The cost of ignoring divine instructions is rarely immediate disaster. It is often delayed momentum. God does not withdraw love when you hesitate, but you may prolong what was ready to move. The door remains available, but the atmosphere of urgency may shift. There is something sacred about responding while the invitation is fresh. It communicates trust. It demonstrates readiness. It positions you as someone who recognizes divine timing. If doubt is still whispering, remember this. You would not be hearing this message if the door were not real. God does not stir hearts for empty gestures. He does not create urgency for illusions. The stirring you feel is evidence that something tangible waits beyond the threshold. Picture yourself standing before that door. It is not massive or intimidating. It is steady. It is prepared. It is unlocked. All that remains is your movement. You do not need to feel completely fearless to open it. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move despite it. Faith does not require perfect confidence. It requires trust in the one who is calling you forward. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. That shift begins the moment you choose alignment. The door does not respond to overthinking. It responds to action. So take inventory of your heart right now. What hesitation needs to be released? What old narrative needs to be silenced? What small step can you take before this symbolic 11:59 p.m.? Opening the door may not look dramatic in the natural realm, but in the spiritual realm, it triggers movement. Angels respond to obedience. Atmospheres adjust to agreement. Pathways clear when faith steps forward. This is your moment to act intentionally. Not rushed but decisive. Not anxious but aligned. The door is before you. The timing is precise. The shift is prepared. All that remains is your hand on the handle. There are moments in the kingdom of God when everything changes without warning. 1 second you are standing in limitation, and the next you are standing in liberation. 1 second you are praying for a breakthrough, and the next you are living inside the answer. This is what I call the suddenly effect. And this is the kind of movement attached to your 11:59 p.m. moment. Scripture is filled with suddenlies. Prison doors suddenly opened. Storms suddenly calmed. Provision suddenly appeared. These were not gradual improvements. They were divine interruptions. Heaven stepped into ordinary timelines and wrote outcomes in an instant. What took years to endure shifted in seconds when God said, "Now." Within minutes, something shifts in your life. That is the language of suddenly. It does not always announce itself with warning signs. It does not send invitations weeks in advance. It arrives at the intersection of obedience and divine timing. You may have spent years feeling stuck. You've been in brain hoping window. It can feel as though progress had been painfully slow. But here is what you must understand. Slow seasons are not wasted seasons. They are compression seasons. God compresses growth into you before He releases expansion around you. Think of a spring being pressed down. The longer it is compressed, the more force it carries when released. Your delay was compression. Your waiting was pressure building. Your silent endurance was energy being stored. And when the suddenly effect is triggered, all that stored preparation propels you forward rapidly. The suddenly effect often comes at the most unexpected hour. Midnight in Scripture was not just a time of darkness, it was a time of divine reversal. When it looked like the night would continue unchanged, heaven intervened. That is why 11:59 p.m. carries weight in this message. It represents the edge of divine interruption. You may look at your circumstances and see no visible sign of change yet. But suddenlies rarely give advance evidence. They arrive because alignment is complete, not because conditions look perfect. In fact, many sudden breakthroughs occur when circumstances look most impossible. What if the very area that seems most resistant right now is the one about to shift? What if the door that has remained closed the longest is the one about to swing open first? God specializes in reversing narratives quickly. What seemed permanent can dissolve. What seemed delayed can accelerate. What seemed finished can revive. This is why the enemy attempts to exhaust you before midnight. He understands the power of suddenly. He wants you too drained to recognize it when it comes. Too discouraged to step into it fully. Too distracted to discern it clearly. But you are not unaware. You recognize that something has been building. You sense that the atmosphere feels different. You feel the tension of transition. That is often the final sign before sudden movement. The suddenly effect does not mean there was no process. It means the process hath reached completion. Just because the manifestation is quick does not mean the preparation was short. The years you thought were stagnant were actually strategic. God was aligning people, refining your character, strengthening your discernment, and positioning opportunities beyond your sight. When the shift happens, others may call it luck. They may say it happened overnight. But you will know better. You will know it was a result of unseen faithfulness. You will understand that what looks sudden externally was cultivated patiently internally. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. That shift could be an answer arriving, a confirmation appearing, a burden lifting, a door opening, a clarity settling in your spirit that changes how you move forward. It might not look dramatic to everyone else, but it will feel undeniable to you. There is also a responsibility that comes with suddenly. Rapid movement requires grounded faith. When acceleration happens, you must remain anchored. Do not let excitement replace wisdom. Do not let speed replace discernment. The same God who releases suddenly also sustains steadily. The suddenly effect is not chaos. It is divine precision executed quickly. It is heaven saying, "The appointed time has arrived." As 11:59 p.m. approaches in this prophetic narrative, understand that midnight is not just another minute. It is the marker of intervention, the line where delay meets decision, the point where preparation meets manifestation. You have endured the process. You have survived the compression. You have stood in faith longer than you thought you could. Now you are standing at the edge of release. Do not underestimate what God can do in a single moment. One phone call can redirect your future. One conversation can restore what was broken. One opportunity can unlock what was delayed. One divine touch can heal what doctors could not explain. One internal revelation can free you from years of limitation. Sudden does not mean random. It means time. And the timing of this shift is not accidental. It is precise. It is intentional. It is prepared. You are closer than you realize. The spring is fully compressed. The alignment is nearly complete. The atmosphere is charged. When heaven says, "Within minutes," it is not exaggerating. Get ready for the suddenly. There have been quiet prayers you never spoke out loud. Questions you whispered in the dark. Moments when you asked God for a sign that He was still working, still listening, still moving on your behalf. And now here you are, hearing this message at a precise moment, with a precise instruction, carrying a precise urgency. This is not coincidence. This is confirmation. You asked for clarity. You asked for direction. You asked God to make it unmistakable if something significant was about to happen. And sometimes confirmation does not arrive as a lightning bolt or an audible voice. Sometimes it arrives as a stirring that refuses to be ignored. Sometimes it comes as a message that feels as though it was written directly for you. The timing of this word is part of the confirmation. The repetition of the phrase, "Within minutes something shifts in your life," is not accidental. When God repeats Himself, it is because He wants your attention anchored. He is emphasizing urgency, not to create anxiety, but to awaken readiness. You may have been seeing subtle patterns lately. Repeated numbers catching your attention. Dreams that feel unusually vivid. A scripture resurfacing in your mind again and again. Unexpected peace in the middle of uncertainty. These are not random details. They are gentle nudges. God often confirms His movement through layers rather than a single dramatic sign. Confirmation also comes through internal alignment. Notice how this message resonates deeper than surface emotion. It feels weighty. It feels personal. It feels as though something inside you is responding before your logic can analyze it. That inner response is your spirit recognizing divine timing. Sometimes confirmation feels uncomfortable before it feels comforting. It exposes areas where you must let go. It reveals attachments that cannot follow you into the next season. It highlights habits that must be adjusted. But even that discomfort is a sign of movement. When nothing is shifting, nothing feels challenged. There is another form of confirmation happening right now. Resistance. The sudden distractions. The unexpected emotional turbulence. The subtle doubts trying to rise. These are not contradictions of the message. They are confirmations of its importance. The enemy does not waste energy opposing what carries no consequence. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. But before the external evidence appears, God confirms internally. He prepares your heart so that when the shift manifests, you are not surprised, you are positioned. You may also notice divine alignment in conversations. Someone mentions something that echoes this message. A song lyric suddenly feels prophetic. A sermon touches the same theme. These overlapping signals are not coincidence. They are heaven layering assurance. The key now is sensitivity. Do not dismiss what feels small. Do not ignore the subtle prompt to pray, to reflect, to act. Confirmation often speaks softly. It invites rather than demands. It nudges rather than shouts. There is also a deeper confirmation, survival. You are still standing. After everything that tried to break you, you are still here. After the disappointments, the delays, the silent seasons, you did not quit. That endurance itself is proof that something greater was ahead. God does not preserve you through intense seasons without purpose. As this moment approaches midnight in the spiritual sense, recognize that confirmation is not about convincing God to act. It is about aligning you to receive. He has already set things in motion. The confirmation is preparation for manifestation. And here is something important. Confirmation does not remove the need for faith. It strengthens it. It reassures you enough to step forward, but it still requires trust. You may not see the entire outcome yet, but you sense the shift forming. If this word feels like an answer to a private prayer, that is because it is. If it feels time, that is because it is. If it feels urgent, that is because heaven is precise. What happens next determines everything. The confirmation had been given. The stirring has begun. The atmosphere is charged. Receive this blessing as a seal over this confirmation. Type "I receive the confirmation" in the comments if this speaks to you. Blessing code 928 is now activated. And as you step into this confirmed moment, understand that supporting this mission is part of spreading these confirmations to others standing at their own 11:59 p.m. When you release a super thanks, join as a member, or so through the PayPal link in the description or the PayPal QR code on the screen, you become a vessel carrying this urgency to someone else who has been praying for a sign. The word declares that when you give, it is given back to you abundantly, and that promise is active right now. I believe God is saying, as you confirm my work, I confirm my promise in your life. Let your seed move swiftly in this hour. Act on it now. There is a truth many people overlook when it comes to divine timing. God sets the appointment, but your response influences the speed of manifestation. The promise may be declared. The shift may be prepared. The atmosphere may be charged. But how quickly you step into it is directly connected to how you respond in this very moment. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. That is heaven's declaration. But alignment is your responsibility. Think about it this way. When a door unlocks automatically, it still requires you to push it open. The mechanism has released. The path is clear. But if you stand still, the door remains unused. Not because it is inaccessible, but because it is unanswered. Your response determines whether you enter quickly or cautiously, whether you move boldly or hesitantly, whether you cross into midnight with confidence or linger in the final seconds of the old cycle. Speed in the spirit is not about rushing recklessly. It is about agreeing immediately. When God speaks, delayed agreement creates unnecessary drive. It is like trying to accelerate while holding the brakes. You cannot expect rapid movement while internally resisting what God has already confirmed. Some of you are on the edge of your shift, but you are still negotiating. You are still asking for one more sign, still revisiting past disappointments, still questioning whether you are worthy. But worthiness was never the requirement. Willingness is. Alignment accelerates. Agreement unlocks momentum. Declaration activates movement. What you say right now matters. What you believe right now matters. What you choose right now matters. Words are not empty in the spiritual realm. They create pathways. They reinforce direction. When you declare faith before you see evidence, you position yourself for swift manifestation. This is why hesitation can be costly, not because God withdraws the promise, but because doubt slows your perception. If you cross into the new season expecting disappointment, you may overlook opportunity. If you step into midnight still rehearsing old fear, you may miss the evidence of change. Your response is not just external action. It is internal posture. Are you stepping forward with expectation? Are you crossing this threshold with belief? Or are you dragging the weight of yesterday into tomorrow? Within minutes, something shifts in your life. But will you recognize it? Will you embrace it? Will you move with it? There are moments when the shift begins subtly. A new idea surfaces. A sudden peace replaces anxiety. A creative strategy forms in your mind. An unexpected invitation appears. If you are spiritually alert, you will see it immediately. If you are distracted or doubtful, you may dismiss it. The speed of your breakthrough is often tied to the clarity of your agreement. When you align fully, movement feels smooth. When you resist internally, even slightly, progress feels stringed. Now is not the time for half-hearted response. It is not the time for partial obedience. It is the time for decisive faith. Declare it openly. Speak it boldly. Align yourself intentionally. If this message is stirring your spirit, do not remain silent. Comment: I step into my shift as a declaration of alignment. Let your words reflect your faith. Share this message with someone who needs to move quickly in their own 11:59 p.m. moment. And if you have not yet subscribed, do it now, because staying connected to prophetic urgency keeps you spiritually alert when timing matters most. Engage with this message not as a spectator, but as a participant in your own breakthrough. The enemy wants your response to be passive. Heaven invites your response to be active. Remember, acceleration feels different than striving. When you are aligned, there is effort, but there is also grace. There is movement, but there is also peace. You are not forcing the shift. You are flowing with it. As midnight approaches in this prophetic timeline, imagine yourself standing at the edge of transition. The old cycle is closing. The new one is opening. The atmosphere is thick with potential. And your response right now determines how swiftly you walk into what has been prepared. Let go of the need to understand every detail. Release the habit of overanalyzing. Silence the internal debate. Say yes. Say yes before the evidence appears. Say yes before fear can speak again. Say yes before hesitation slows your momentum. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. And when it does, let it find you aligned. Let it find you ready. Let it find you moving. Because this is not just about what God is doing. It is about how you are responding. And your response determines the speed. God is saying, within minutes, something shifts in your life. But what exactly does that mean? What will actually change? How will you recognize it? The shift may not look the same for everyone, but it will be specific, intentional, and unmistakable in its impact. For some of you, the shift begins internally. A heavy cloud of confusion suddenly lifts. A clarity settles over your thoughts that was not there before. The anxiety that once gripped your chest loosens its hold. Peace steps in quietly but firmly. You may wake up and realize that what once overwhelmed you no longer has the same power. That is a shift. For others, the change will manifest in relationships. A conversation that seemed impossible suddenly flows with honesty and understanding. A heart that felt distant softens unexpectedly. Reconciliation becomes possible. Or in some cases, clarity will reveal who cannot go with you into the next season. Not every shift restores, some redefine. And even that is protection. There are those who will see movement in their opportunities. A door that remained closed for months suddenly opens. An email arrives. A phone call changes direction. A new idea forms with unusual precision. The stagnation you felt in your career, your calling, or your creative pursuits begins to dissolve. Momentum replaces frustration. Within minutes, something shifts in your life, and in some cases, that shift will affect finances. Provision may not fall from the sky dramatically, but strategy will emerge. Wisdom will surface. Unexpected support may appear. A solution to what felt impossible will reveal itself in a way that feels timed rather than forced. For some, the shift will be physical or emotional healing. Strength returning. Hope rising. Motivation awakening after a long season of weariness. You may not even realize when it begins, but suddenly you feel lighter, stronger, steadier. It is important to understand that shifts do not always announce themselves loudly. Sometimes they are quiet but powerful. Like the moment when night turns into day. There is no explosion when midnight passes. Yet everything changes. A new date begins. A new cycle starts. A new atmosphere forms. The invisible turning point is often more significant than dramatic displays. When a pilot changes the direction of a plane by only a few degrees, the long-term destination changes completely. In the same way, a small shift in your thinking, your decision, your alignment tonight can redirect the entire trajectory of your future. You may have been expecting fireworks, but what if the shift is strategic instead of sensational? What if it is subtle but irreversible? God moves beyond human logic. We expect big signs. He often works through precise adjustments. We anticipate loud declarations. He sometimes initiates quiet reversals. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. The question is not whether it will happen. The question is how attentive you will be when it does. You might notice a sudden confidence rising in an area where you once doubted yourself. You might feel prompted to take action without the usual fear. You might receive confirmation that solidifies a decision you were hesitant to make. In some cases, the shift will begin as a divine disruption, something that interrupts your routine, an unexpected change that forces you to pivot. Do not assume disruption is negative. Sometimes God shakes what is comfortable to introduce what is necessary. What felt delayed may begin to accelerate. What felt complicated may simplify. What felt blocked may clear. It may not all unfold in a single dramatic event, but the pivot will be real. There is also a spiritual authority that increases in moments like this. Prayer feels sharper. Discernment feels stronger. Confidence in God's voice feels clearer. The shift is not only external, it is empowerment. Remember, minutes are powerful. We often measure life in years and seasons, but history has changed in minutes. Decisions made in a brief moment have altered generations. A single conversation can redirect destiny. A single act of obedience can unlock decades of blessing. You have stood at many minutes in your life that felt ordinary, but this one carries weight. This one is marked. This one has been prepared. As the clock approaches midnight in this prophetic narrative, expect movement. Expect clarity. Expect peace. Expect alignment. And when it happens, whether quietly or dramatically, do not minimize it. Do not second-guess it. Do not attribute it to coincidence. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. The heaviness gives way to hope. The confusion gives way to clarity. The delay gives weight to direction. You may not see the full picture immediately, but you will sense the difference. The atmosphere will feel lighter. Your spirit will feel steadier. The path will feel clear. And when you look back, you will remember this exact moment. The moment when heaven said it would shift. The moment when urgency met obedience. The moment when midnight became a marker of change. The shift is not imaginary. It is intentional. And it begins within minutes. Midnight has a quiet power to it. There is no loud announcement when the clock strikes. No visible line in the sky separating one day from the next. Yet everything changes in that single second. The day shifts. The old day closes. A new one begins. And in the same way, when your spiritual 11:59 p.m. passes into midnight, something profound settles into place. After the clock strikes, you may not hear thunder. You may not see fireworks, but you will sense alignment, a stillness, a confirmation that what was spoken has begun to manifest. Within minutes, something shifts in your life, and after that shift locks in, there is a different kind of peace that follows. This peace is not based on circumstances instantly becoming perfect. It is based on certainty. The kind of certainty that tells you the turning point has already happened. Even if external evidence is still unfolding, internally you know you have crossed over. There is something sacred about crossing a threshold knowingly. You did not stumble into this moment. You responded intentionally. You aligned deliberately. And now, after the clock strikes, you stand on new ground. Some of you will notice that fear loses its grip almost immediately. The same situation that caused anxiety yesterday does not intimidate you today. The same challenge that once felt overwhelming now feels manageable. That is not denial. That is transformation. Others may know is subtle but undeniable external confirmations. A conversation shifts tone. An opportunity becomes clear. A delay suddenly resolves. It may not look dramatic to outsiders, but you will recognize the fingerprint of divine timing all over it. After midnight, there is also responsibility. A new day carries new assignments. The shift is not just about relief. It is about repositioning. God does not move you simply to make you comfortable. He moves you to make you effective. You may sense new ideas forming, new direction crystallizing, new courage rising. That is because when a shift happens, capacity increases. You are not the same person you were at 11:58 p.m. Something adjusted. Something strengthened. Something aligned. There is also closure that comes with this moment. Certain worries will not follow you into this new cycle. Certain battles have expired. Certain struggles have reached their conclusion. You may not realize immediately which ones have ended, but over the next hours and days, you will recognize that what once consumed your energy no longer holds the same weight. After the clock strikes, you may feel tempted to analyze everything, to question whether it truly happened, to look for dramatic evidence. But remember, the most powerful shifts are often internal first. Roots grow beneath the surface before trees appear above it. Trust the subtle. Trust the quiet confidence. Trust the steady peace. Within minutes, something shifts in your life. And once that shift has occurred, there is no returning to who you were before it. You cannot unsee what has been revealed. You cannot unknow what has been confirmed. You cannot step backward into a season that has already closed. There may still be practical steps ahead, decisions to make, actions to take, but you will approach them differently now, with clarity instead of confusion, with faith instead of fear, with direction instead of doubt. Midnight is not just an ending. It is an announcement that a new chapter has begun. And unlike previous transitions that felt forced or unclear, this one carries assurance. You might even notice gratitude rising unexpectedly. A deep thankfulness not only for what is coming, but for what you survived. Because standing on the other side of 11:59 p.m. reveals how far you have traveled. The enemy may attempt one last whisper. Nothing has changed. But do not listen. Change does not need to shout to be real. The authority of this shift was established before the clock ever moved. As you step forward from this moment, guard what has been established. Protect your peace. Continue aligning your thoughts with what God has declared. Do not allow old patterns to reattach themselves. After the clock strikes, you are walking in manifestation mode. Not striving, not forcing, simply cooperating with what has already been set in motion. The heaviness that once defined your days will not dominate this new cycle. The confusion that clouded your path will not dictate your direction. The delay that tested your patience will not define your future. Midnight has come. The old chapter has closed. A new one has opened. And you are not standing at the edge anymore. You have crossed over. God is saying, within minutes, something shifts in your life. And now you understand what that truly means. This was never just about a clock. It was about a crossing, a divine threshold, a sacred intersection where obedience met urgency, where faith met timing, where preparation met manifestation. You were not listening to random words. You were standing inside a prophetic moment. From the first stirring to the final crossing, heaven had been intentional. The countdown was not designed to pressure you. It was designed to position you. 11:59 p.m. represented the final breath of an old cycle. Midnight marked the birth of something new. And now, as this message reaches its completion, there is a divine seal being placed over your life. The shift has begun. You may not see every detail yet. You may not understand every layer. But something has aligned. Something has locked into place. Something irreversible has started. The heaviness you carried is no longer authorized to dominate this new season. The confusion that once clouded your thinking no longer has the same access. The delay that stretched you no longer defines you. Within minutes, something shifted in your life. And now that shift is being sealed with assurance. God is faithful to complete what He begins. He does not initiate transformation only to abandon it halfway. What he starts, he sustains. What he opens, he supports. What he shifts, he establishes. This is not temporary emotion. This is divine repositioning. And as this new chapter unfolds, you will look back at this exact moment and recognize it as the turning point. The night you chose alignment. The hour you responded instead of hesitated. The minute you crossed instead of stayed behind. There will be days ahead when you see visible evidence of what changed tonight. Doors that once resisted will respond differently. Conversations that once felt strained will flow differently. Opportunities that once felt distant will draw closer. But even before all of that, you already carry the greatest evidence: peace. Peace is the signature of alignment. It is the quiet confirmation that you are standing where you are meant to stand. It does not mean challenges will disappear. It means you will face them differently. The divine seal before midnight is this: you are not who you were. The cycle that held you has closed. The limitation that defined you has expired. The waiting season that tested you has completed its assignment. Now you move forward not as someone hoping for change, but as someone who has stepped into it. Continue guarding your focus. Continue protecting your peace. Continue speaking what God has declared rather than what fear suggests. The shift may have begun within minutes, but its impact will echo for years. Do not shrink back into old thinking. Do not revisit expired fears. Do not question what has already been confirmed. You have crossed. And because you crossed, acceleration will follow alignment. Clarity will follow obedience. Stability will follow surrender. Receive this final blessing as the divine seal over your midnight moment. Type "IT is sealed" in the comments if you believe this word. Blessing code 602 is now activated. May your new chapter be marked by favor. May your steps be ordered with precision. May your discernment remain sharp. May your peace remain unshaken. May your obedience continue to unlock doors you never imagined possible. And remember this: midnight was not the end. It was the beginning. The shift is sealed. Walk in it. As this message closes, understand that the same urgency that brought you to your 11:59 p.m. is reaching thousands who are still standing at theirs. When you release a super thanks, become a member, or so through the PayPal link in the description or the PayPal QR code on your screen, you are not supporting a platform. You are fueling a prophetic alarm that awakens souls before their moment passes. The Lord declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over," and that promise is alive over your seed right now. I sense God saying, as you help seal this word in others, I seal increase over you. This is not a casual donation. It is a prophetic act of agreement with heaven's timing. Let your giving move swiftly in this hour. Obey the nudge. Activate the overflow. The countdown has ended. The new day has begun. And within minutes, everything changed. V